you saw over the intermediary step, okay, between the black as the proxy warrior in the cities like Chicago and the homosexual as the proxy warrior today was the woman as the proxy warrior. And this was known as the feminist movement, a movement that was controlled by Jews. The most prominent feminists were all Jews. Betty Friedan, Betty Goldstein was her maiden name, was a communist. And what she saw, and what many people saw at that time, was a development of class struggle into gender struggle. In other words, you can pit one group against each other, and what better way to do this than pitting male against female? Because it goes all the way back to the beginning, doesn't it? You know, Adam and Eve had problems in paradise. And if they have problems in paradise, you're going to have problems here too. And so there are people who can come in now and instrumentalize this, the most sacred of all relationships, because it creates new life, and turn it into a field of warfare, which is precisely what happened during the 1970s. Okay, the reason I am not a professor at a Catholic college anymore is because of feminism. Because the feminists had taken over what was a female Catholic institution and turned it into a feminist institution for social engineering young Catholic ladies. Okay, the oligarchs were very interested in this. Okay, for one very simple reason: if you if you put women in the workforce, you will effectively double the workforce, and if you double the workforce, you will half wages. Wages will be cut in half. It's simple mathematics, it's simple supply and demand, and that was the reason why feminism was promoted by all of the oligarchic institutions during the 1970s. That was the purpose of the Equal Rights Amendment, which did get defeated, by the way. But it was the point here would be they would come up with slogans like equal pay for equal work. Who can argue with equal pay for equal work? Well, you can't unless you know what the previous formula was, which was the family wage. During the 1950s, we had a great surge of prosperity based on the fact that a man was now entitled to earn a wage that would allow him to support a family. This is a crucial building block for a successful economy. The main reason, I cover this in my book, Barren Metal, which is a history of capitalism as the conflict between labor and usury. The main reason that Florence, which was the most advanced culture in Europe in the 15th century, the main reason that culture failed is because they refused to pay a family wage. If you do not pay a family wage, that means women cannot bear children. A man cannot afford to support his family. If women cannot bear children, then the workforce disappears overnight or in the course of one generation, which is precisely what happened to Florence, which went from being the most prosperous economy in Europe at that time to being a museum, which is what it is today. Okay, that's what happened during this period of time. So feminism, by promoting women's rights, effectively destroyed the ability of a man to provide for his family. This then led to the situation we have today, which, if you're lucky, you and your wife will have a job, and you and your wife will have to work, both of you, to achieve what your father and your grandfather got simply by having the man work. That is the net result of feminism. That is the net result of the long-term result of the 19th Amendment. That is how women got weaponized, and that's the situation we live in today. So I'm sitting in New York City on a bench, Washington Square in Greenwich Village, and there's a woman who's sitting next to another woman, and she's saying, I was eating my cheese sandwich on my sofa last night, and I burst into tears because I realized I have no friends, I have no family, I have nothing but this job that sucks the labor out of me for 70 hours a week. My life is over. Well, maybe you should tell, because this was the ideal job. She was a lawyer in a big-time firm in New York City, in Manhattan. She got to live in Manhattan, which is the goal of all these feminists. And what they gave her was a high salary in exchange for her life. For her life. She has no life. Okay? When I was 21 years old, I got married, even though I hadn't graduated from college yet. That will be 50 years ago in August. Okay, and one of the main things on my mind was that I wanted a life, and I couldn't have a life by myself. I had to have a life with someone else, and it had to be the woman that I eventually married, and we've been together for 50 years. So this is my what I'm trying to tell the 20-year-olds now is that a high-paying job, even though they are disappearing, you're not going to get one anyway. But a high-paying job is no substitute for a life.
That's a great answer. It's great for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's so important to talk about the economic consequences of feminism. I think that's probably the last thing a lot of people consider. A lot of young people are introduced to anti-feminism or skepticism, criticism about so-called third or fourth wave feminism because of its effects on things like video games or movies. But I think far less considered is, like you said, the economic consequence, which is the halving of wages, which is the effect on the labor force, which is so critical, so important in explaining a variety of things. Like you said, the fertility rates being predominant, that if you don't have a man in the house making family wage, you can't have kids. And also great answer because the life advice, and congratulations on 50 years. If it's 50 years this year, very big achievement. Of course. And great to see be so much divorce these days. So truly